Gregory Gilbert is a senior at Cesar Chavez Public Charter School here in Washington, D.C., and will present this year's Educator of the Year award. So please welcome Gregory to the stage.
Well, I was going to say my name and stuff, but she covered all that. So, but to continue on, thank you. But my teacher's name that I want to talk about today is Miss Magwood. And Miss Magwood is such an amazing teacher. She teaches 3 different classes on our campus: U.S. Government, D.C. History, and our school-required thesis class that I'm not going to get into. In the way that she teaches us, she uses different activities in different ways to keep us interested in the class. So even though sometimes we feel as though we might want to fall asleep, don't feel like taking notes, we still find a way to, she finds a way to make us interested in the class without just like teaching us just the lesson, but teaching us how this applies to us in life. And often or not, she has her hand gestures that sometimes throws us off a little bit. Or like she'll jump from one side of the room to another to get her point across about how different sides feel and things like that. Or like even if it's just having us dress up as like the judges in the Supreme Court to do our moot court class sessions. The reason I nominate Ms. Magwood for this award is because the knowledge that she gives to me and my classmates is more than enough that we know that if we go out into public, we know what we're talking about when we're talking about law. We know what we're talking about when someone asks us something about the Constitution. She makes it so that we almost know law like the back of our hands. And she treats each and every one of us as if we were our own kids, just like the rest of our teachers. But she does it to a more further extent with like making sure that you have whatever you need for the next day of school. If you know that you got a project due the next day, and she knows daggone well that you didn't do it. And her methods of just teaching are just so creative. They're new, they're fresh, and like never 2 days in her class are the same. There's never 2 moot court sessions in her class that are the same. There are never 2 lessons in her class that are the same. And she makes us feel empowered as young Americans growing up in society. And the power we feel in knowing that knowledge is just tremendous. So without further ado, now it's my pleasure to present Ms. Magwood with this award.
Hello, everybody. First, I'd love to thank Street Law. I don't actually teach a street law course, but as he pointed out, all my classes are just all about the Constitution, all about constitutional law. So a street law provides all these resources to me. Before I discovered street law, I used to read the court cases and summarize them myself, every single one. Until I discovered that street law has this website with all of these court cases, and you can look them up by year, by amendment, by clause, by any way you want. So that has transformed my life. And also, I went to this, I taught myself, I'm not a lawyer, so I taught myself everything I know about the Constitution late at night, just reading on the internet. And then again, I discovered the Supreme Court Institute for Teachers, voila, that taught me everything about it. So street law made my life just infinitely better, easier. So I want to, and right now we're also participating in the diversity pipeline, which is legal diversity pipeline. The lawyers came in for the first time the other day, and it was fantastic. So I strongly recommend that program. And I also want to thank Cesar Chavez. And my husband, Eric Magwood. So, how many of you out there are in the law profession? Right. Ooh, okay. And how many of you either remember your con law class or enjoy hearing about the Constitution? Okay, less hands, fewer. Okay, so it's your job to keep everyone else awake, because I'm going to be talking about the Constitution. So again, I'm not a lawyer. I've never had a con law class, never formally learned a single thing about the Constitution. But like I said, I just read and read and read and read, and about 3 or 4 years ago, I discovered the Constitution, and I fell in love. And I mean, seriously in love with the Constitution. So I did what any self-respecting teacher would do. I immediately hijacked the class curriculum for my own personal purposes and imposed my personal agenda and interests on my kids and taught them to learn the Constitution as well. Oh, did I really say that? I'm going to get in trouble. What I meant to say was that after a careful, systematic, strategic process of researching and planning, I made the informed decision to reformulate the curriculum around a constitutional analysis lens. Is that better, Janine? So, during U.S. government course, classes, as Greg said, we had a moot court almost every Thursday. And the students, you could hear them coming down the hallway. Moot, 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 moot. Am I wrong? They would dress up in graduation gowns. I mean, justice robes. And the Supreme Court justice had a crab mallet. I mean, a gavel. And they would file into class while I would play on my laptop the oh yay, oh yay, oh yay intonation. And then we would have the moot court. And then for our unit on elections democracy, it was a little bit different. We had fishbowl discussions, and the rule was you could only talk if you were in the inside circle. So, especially in Greg's class, which was it's this especially exuberant class, the kids would stand on the outside of the circle like this. I don't know if you can see me. Waiting to tap out the kids on the inside circle so that they could get a chance to talk. So I was successful at spreading my joy about the Constitution. But specifically, I oriented the classes around these, what I called constitutional tensions, because our Constitution I discovered, is full of these fascinating, timeless, enduring, age-old tensions, like individual rights versus the common good, liberty versus privacy, state versus federal powers, empowered versus limited government. And I found that having the students analyze and discuss these age-old tensions, and then backing up their arguments with evidence from the Constitution and the court case, just completely transformed my teaching in both my U.S. government class and also the senior thesis class that he did not want to talk about. It greatly increased the level of analysis that the kids were doing. So in this senior thesis class, it's a graduation requirement. They write a 12 to 15-page paper on a public policy topic of their choice, and defend it in front of a panel of outside public policy professionals. Speaking of, anybody want to come? May 23rd, May 24th, we still need judges. But in past years, when I first went, especially some of the weaker students, because we are at open enrollment schools, so we have students of varying skills coming in. Some of these theses, when I first got there, the kids used to sort of memorize just vast amounts of sometimes random facts about their public policy and then regurgitate them. It was pure torture. So when instead I was like, okay, we're going to do something different. we're going to analyze the public policy through these tensions. So you're not going to talk about, oh, those poor children, they're being abused. Child abuse is horrible. Child abuse is horrible. Did I mention it's horrible? We went from that to discussing the tension between parental rights as protected by the Due Process Clause versus the need for the state to protect the children. You're talking about that tension, individual rights versus the common good, and all of a sudden these theses were transformed. Last spring, one of my students wrote her senior thesis on same-sex marriage. It wasn't about whether she thought it was right or wrong. She analyzed the tension between state and federal rights, whether marriage was a fundamental right protected by the Constitution, whether same-sex marriage rights were civil rights, and whether the government should prioritize minority rights or moral values. In order to do this, she analyzed and applied the Due Process Clause, the Equal Protection Clause, the Full Faith and Credit Clause, the 10th Amendment, and the Establishment Clause. Did I mention she receives special education services? Here's another example of how the students have learned to dig deeper beyond the superficial and get to the meat. So for the moot courts, this week was Substantive Due Process Week. So I searched the street law site, and the only court case brief on the street law site for substantive due process is Lawrence v. Texas, anti-sodomy law. Seventh period is all boys, 17-year-old boys. After a flurry of emails between Lee and I determined that there's nothing to be done. There's no other court case on substantive due process. So I let the class know. Complete silence. Then DeQuan pipes up and said, "That's okay, Miss Magwood. It's not about gay sex. It's about privacy." And the class had this mature moot court discussion about whether or not the Due Process Clause allows government intrusion on personal matters such as that. And then the other thing that this allowed is it transformed, like, I'm right, you're wrong, or in my students' cases, I'm right, you're stupid, discussions into intellectual, respectful conversations. And so we had a discussion on affirmative action. My students are all Black and Latino, so this was very difficult for some students. And when we started out, some students were, they're stupid racist, was sort of the gut reaction to people who might not agree with their position. But by the end, they may not have agreed with the other side, but they respectfully understood and respected the other position that somebody might prefer to pursue equality of opportunity rather than equality of outcome. But finally, the last thing I wanted to say is what Greg said. I think the most important thing is, again, as a school of minority students, Black and Latino students, learning about the Constitution and learning about the rights in the Constitution that are for all people is simply just a very empowering thing for young people. And so thank you, Street Law, for all the work that you do.